Good to go. Excellent. Good to see you all. Good to see a lot of familiar faces from the dark and not so distant past. That's me. I've got to make sure I get this right now. Seb, it's not working. Ah, there we go. I'll start this one. Telford and Wrekin Council. I work for Telford and Wrekin Council. I'm part of Highways and Engineering. And we've got our own geotechnical team. And we operate as geotechnics and structures now because we've acquired a couple of structural engineers and amalgamated. That is the World Heritage Site. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I don't know what that means, but it's something to do with the United Nations. We get no more money because we're a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's just a badge you can wear on your sleeve or a carbuncle on the backside of humanity, which is the Ironbridge Gorge. It covers 550 hectares and 3/4 of it is in our jurisdiction. So that's the blue line, which is a bit difficult to see, but the blue line around the edge there is the World Heritage Site, and then that cuts it off at the boundary there. That green line, that's the boundary of the borough, and it covers Ironbridge itself. I'm going to test this now, Seb. No, that doesn't work. Ironbridge itself, and then Jackfield, Coalport, and little bits of Bliss Hill, the Victorian Museum up Legs Way, going up that way, and also Colebrookdale, which is that little tributary. I'm going to do this the old way. This bit here is the valley of the Colebrook, or Colebrookdale, and it'll be the death of me, that is, which is a tributary to the River Severn. This is a LiDAR image, slightly tilted, which I think is quite lovely. This was given to us by Card Geotechnics, and I'll come back to that later on. So this is the main Legs Way, coming past Bliss Hill, River Severn down there. This is the Lloyds, which we'll speak about. Jackfield over here. A couple of tributary valleys coming in from the Broseley side, on the Shropshire side of the border. And then that is Colebrookdale up in the top left-hand corner. And that, I nabbed that off Wikipedia, I think. That is a view of Ironbridge from the Ironbridge, looking to the Tontine Hill. The Tontine Hill is there with the Tontine Hotel, which was allegedly built as an administration centre for the construction of the bridge in 1779. It was opened in 1779. The whole of Ironbridge and Colebrookdale as well, lesser so down at Coalport, where the valley's starting to flatten out a bit. It is built from a series of roads going up the hillside, narrow lanes. They look a bit like Cornwall, and they're held by retaining walls. So if your retaining wall is supporting the road, that belongs to us, generally, 9 times out of 10. If it's supporting a property, it belongs to the property owner. So we've got quite a lot. We've got over 200 retaining walls we have to make sure work. They fall over pretty much all the time. We had one fall over last year, which we're putting right this year. That's the kind of lead-in time councils work at, which I used to think was because of the council, but it isn't. I'm blaming somebody else, and I'm not going to mention them. And St Luke's Church is an interesting one. St Luke's Church there's a sort of red brick at the bottom of it, and then you've got yellowish beigeish brick on the top. So the beige bit belongs to Jesus. The red bit at the bottom belongs to Telford and Wrekin Highways. That's a retaining structure. And there's actually, if you ever go this way, you go around the back of the big teddy bear shop here. There's a set of steps that goes underneath the graveyard and pops you out on St Luke's Road. It's a bit of a view. We don't look when we go through there. It's a bit cracked. So I'll talk a little bit about the, I'll tell you what, I'm going back. Let's go to the Ironbridge. The Ironbridge cast has been owned in 1779. You can't see, but where the bottom of the photo is the apex of the bridge, and the apex is quite steep now. It wasn't built that steep. It's the sides of the valley are pushing the bridge down. And in 1974, they did some remedial works to it. And there's a big U-shaped reinforced concrete bit that sits in the bottom of the river. And I've got an ashtray on my desk commemorating that, which is ironic because I don't smoke, but I nicked it from my father-in-law. There will be something I thought. So, bit of the prehistory. Pretty much all the rocks we've got are Paleozoic. I'm looking at Adrian because Adrian will pull me if I get this wrong. Primarily Wenlock of the Silurian, and then we've got Pennine lower and middle coal measures in New Money, Etruria Formation, and Halesoe Formation. So we're looking at these bits down here. So the Benthal beds is all part of the Much Wenlock. So if you're in the Black Country, it's the Dudley limestone, it's Benthal limestone over there. And then to the east of, no, to the west of that is the Coalbrookdale Formation, which is formerly known as the artist known as Wenlock Shale. Does that sound about right? Is that right? It was Wenlock Shale, wasn't it? And I chuck this in because we've got a multi-agency response. If there's a problem in the gorge, we've got a multi-agency response. So just for the benefit of the armed forces and the fire brigade, etc. I thought, I do like a trilobite. And that's what it would have looked like in Coalbrookdale in the Silurian. That's Coalbrook Carboniferous rocks. I won't dwell too much on those, and that's what it looked like. I like these chaps. What's that called? Something pleura, isn't it? Arthropleura. It's like a woodlouse that was this big, or but that big, wasn't it? The one that got away was this big. And that's just an explosion of the mining geology. So all these little green asterisks are where there are significant ironstone seams which aren't shown on it. A lot of coal. But what we also got in the Ironbridge Gorge is a bonus, which is the main sulfur coal and the little sulfur coal in the Halesoe Formation. So in the Black Country, Halesoe Formation's got thin, smutty coals. They're not worth having, but there was a really good seam, which is the main sulfur, and the little sulfur was thinner, but still worth having. And that's what's going on down the eastern side of the gorge. So that's what we've got there. I'm going to swap sides now. So all this is the Silurians. You've got the Coalbrookdale Formation. This turquoise crop here, that's the Benthal Edge limestone. Then you've got the limestone fault, which runs here, going up Lincoln Hill. And there's extensive workings there we looked at last year when we did a field course. And then everything this side of it is the coal measures. And if you look, everything that's carboniferous is dipping in that direction, following the dip of the river, the direction of the river. So it all comes to a point. There's lots of little chevrons where it comes down the hillside, down the valley sides, meets in the river, and then goes back up on the return this way. I'm sorry, I can't get this pointer to work, so all the coal seams do that, and because it's quite steep sides in the gorge, a lot of the mine workings was done via adits, so they just burrow into the hillside as they went along. The difference with the Silurian is that they dip to the southwest, and that's quite important. We'll come back to that later. And then this I pinched off from Herefordshire Council, which is why there's a yellow blob of Herefordshire there. But that shows the maximum extent of the Devensian ice 20,000 years ago. So everything blue is an ice sheet, everything brown is tundra with permafrost. I did a walk in the gorge. Oh, crikey. I bet it was 25 years ago with Alec Carson. You know Alec Carson. And he did a brilliant walk. And the tundra there, the permafrost was possibly frozen to several hundred meters thickness. It's quite a piece of work. That's Siberia, but I'll put that in for the fire brigade so that they could understand what the terrain was like. That's Siberian tundra. And these are the guys that would be your neighbours if you're out there. I always found quite amazed that the spotted hyena were there, because we tend to think of them running around the African savannah, but that's what they did. I suppose if you've got mega herbivores, there's a lot for you to eat as a scavenger, and keep you warm. Right, I won't regurgitate what's written there, but one of the prime directives of slope instability caused by the glaciation is in the periglacial landscape. You get two processes: gelifluction and solifluction. Solifluction, I think most people know, solifluction is a freeze thaw, so the upper few meters of ground thaw in the summer months, or as the climate warms up, and then that will start to slide down the hillside, so you get these shear plains developing at the base of the permafrost. Gelifluction, I think it's safe to say that all gelifluction is solifluction, but not all solifluction is gelifluction. The gelifluction is where you get saturated soils caused by the melting of ice lenses within the permafrost. That's just I don't know where I've stolen that from. That's solifluction sheets, lobate things, all the geological, sort of geomorphological processes that you'd see. But I think this is, I'll skip that one. This is Alaska. And I think there you get a good idea what it would have been like. So all these lobes and these linear features here are soliflucted material. And obviously, as your climate's warming, the depth of which things are thawing is increasing. So you will get numerous layers of soliflucted material sliding over previously soliflucted material. And I remember Alec Carson telling a story once that a very excited consultant rang him up and said, "Alec, we've found the shear plane in Jackfield." I know it was Jackfield, but somewhere in the gorge. So it was Jackfield. "We found the shear plane in Jackfield." And Alec said, "That's great. I'm really pleased for you. Go and find the other 16. And they can be stacked up. And my old boss isn't here now, unfortunately. He's going to come. But he said to me, if you go look, if you're in soliflucted deposits, you've got a soliflucted mantle. If you can't find a shear surface, you're not looking hard enough, because it has to be there. And these are just two breakdowns of this type of materials. Colluvium is really anything that's gravity, caused by gravity deposit. So scree, if you go through Snowdonia and you've got that the talos or scree bits of rock at the foot of a mountain, that's gravity. But it also is a hill wash, sheet wash, mudslides, anything like that, whereas head is specifically as a result of solifluction or gelifluction. And then we'll come to some of the rotational landslides, which we get typically in the Lloyds. I'll come to that later. There are other processes. So mudslides are one. We don't tend to see a lot of that, but I think it happened in the past. Toppling, we get at the top of Jigger's Bank. We'll come to Jigger's Bank in a bit. But we get big lumps of rock just breaking away and falling off, because of car-sized lumps, which is normally our problem, but is fortunately the problem of the Seven Gorge Countryside Trust, who thank us for that. So what all I've done here is I've taken out everything that's hard and sandstone or limestone. So it's a vast majority of the rock is a mud rock, which weathers to a clay, which really doesn't help you if you're trying to avoid having something that's soliflucted and sliding down a hill. This this is Jiggers Bank. These are the Coalbrookdale Formation, and you can see there, that there is a slip surface, and that it's a little bit different. That's not caused by solifluction, but there's been movement on it. But that's a bentonite layer. So within the Coalbrookdale Formation and the limestones, you get layers of bentonite, which is cat litter, and it's a volcanogenic clay. Is that right? Is that how you say it? So it's a clay that's falling into water from ash clouds. So all the fines. And that was a little bit of a monkey so, but they dug that out. We'll have a look at that after. And that's the inverse of it. That's all your sandstone. So there's not as much. Problem we get with sandstone is this cambering. So you got soft rocks underneath, like the Coalbrookdale Formation, and you've got something on top like the Liebrook sandstone. It'll start to move down the hillside. It breaks apart. You get these joints which open up, and they're called gulls, and you get them full of sand. We did a borehole on Jiggers Bank. Come back to this after, but I'll do it now. We drilled one borehole. We went a metre straight onto the sandstone. Refused. SBT refused. We drilled the next one up about 10 metres up the road, and it went through 15 metres of sand. There was no logical reason for it other than it was a gull, because we then drilled a rotary hole next to it, which went straight into the bedrock. So they're there, and that's all the problems we had with jiggers. I pulled out 4 examples. So like, when James Bathen asked me to do this, he says, if you could concentrate on geology, well, I've done that, but you can't really. Everything's interlinked. The prehistory, the industrial history, and the engineering all linked together with the geology. So the 1773 Buildwas landslide, and then I've got 3 examples of where we've worked and the problems we had with those. And that's where they are. So Jiggers Bank is actually, most of it is just off the World Heritage Site, but it's one of the main roads into Ironbridge. Buildwas landslip is, we got away with not having most of that, but it would cause absolute merry hell when they built the Buildwas bypass. There's a lot going on there. And then Lloyd's Coppice, Jackfield. And this is an area in Coalport. This is on the Madeley Road, and this is an old spoil tip. And that moved in the 1930s, I think, the 30s or 40s. That caused some problems, but that wasn't a natural periglacial feature. It was because they got this spoil tip on it. I will take an exception. I will read some of this because there is a document. If anybody wants it, drop me an email. I'll send it to you. And it's written by John Fletcher, who was the most pious vicar of Madeley. And the account it's just written in 18th century lingo, and it's absolutely beautiful. But he talks about this. The place is remarkable of being the scene of an extraordinary concussion of the earth, which in its effect perfectly agrees with those occasioned by earthquakes in Calabria. I can't read. This singularly awful event, and I think that's quite lovely. Singularly awful event. But the thing is, this is what we've got. I'll talk a bit more about Operation Tangent, which is the emergency response. I say if we get a catastrophic landslide in the Ironbridge Gorge. I had to correct myself when I did a talk for the team and say when we get a catastrophic landslip, because it will happen. But the one thing we have to account for is if there is a catastrophic landslip and it blocks the River Severn. And here you've got an account there that Bridge North, the water fell 6 feet in 6 minutes because I missed it. No, I'll carry on. This here is the old course of the River Severn, and this low bay. structure there was caused by the landslip. It opened a chasm at the back, and the water of the river had to cut a new channel, which is where it goes to this day. Remember me saying about the dip of the strata is not in our favour on our side of the river, on the north side of the river. All the dip of the strata goes in the same direction as the hillside, as the side of the valley, and that's what caused the landslip. And it's going along our good friends bentonite seams. Right, Lloyd's. So Lloyd's is the road, Lloyd's Coppice is the woodland above it. And it's a series of rotational translational slides. That, did you see that properly? Yes. That's what it looks like. It's a big, lovely wood, and that's the road at the bottom. You see, this is part of the stabilisation. So this bit is artificially straight now. It used to do that. I don't think it was built wiggling that much, and it also, not only does it wiggle east and west and north and south, it does up and down. And if you go down on your bike, it's great fun. Probably safest way to do it. But that is the LiDAR image. And you see that top of it there, there's an obvious backscarp and lots of nibbles out of it, like a toddler biting its cot. It's a bit hard to see, but the first image was better, so that's a repeat of the other one. And this is from 1924. And that's where they photographed the backscarp for the first time. It says that's Mott MacDonald restricted, you won't tell, will you? But it's, you know, it's quite a size. It's probably about 30 meters high. And this was the first stage of trying to put it right. They put some gabion baskets in. Gabion baskets crop up everywhere. I like gabion baskets, but you've got to build them right. More on that later. And you can see that it's even on that side. This is the bit we straightened out. You've got Lloyd's Cottage there. There's a bit of Lloyd's Cottage. And it's still quite undulose. Lloyd's Cottage, when you look at it, and I'm sorry I didn't put a better picture in, but it leans back at an angle, and you look at it the first time, you think, why on earth is it leaning back? Why isn't it toppling into the river? It didn't, because it's on a piece of land that's done that, so that the house is tilted back. And we use that as our offices during the Jackfield stabilisation. And somebody, so we should remain nameless, thought this floor's uneven. We'll level the floor out. So as a consequence, at the front of the house, you can stand and look out the windows. And at the back of the house, you have to sit down because the ceiling, they didn't straighten the ceiling. The ceiling's still doing that. But yeah, if you ever walk down that way, it's quite a sight. And we sold it about 4 years ago, and somebody bought it privately, and must have been a cash sale. But I'm sure he gets fed up by people stuffing, pointing at it and laughing. And I do 2 walks a year with the walking festival, and numerous I did with the Geology Society, and we all stop and we point and we try not to laugh, but you have to. So that is one of Jacob's drawings. And you're going to say yay or something? No, fair enough. 3 inclinometers through it, and you can see the rotational failure. I'm always troubled because Lloyd's Cottage is straight on that one. So you can see there's a lot going on, a lot of rotational failure, and it actually daylights in the middle of the River Severn. And this was the scheme. So there's 2 schemes shown on this. The top one is Lloyd's Phase 1. So there's a row of piles on the north side of the Lloyd's Road, and then there's a row of piles, double row of piles on the south side, and that's got a concrete cap on it. So when you walk along the road, you think, oh, that's a lovely piece of concrete that they've put in and spent lots of money in to put a handrail on, but it isn't. It's the pile cap, and they just bolted the handrail to it. The second one was done to a funding window. So there's 2 rows of piles there, and this is the upper track. This is the lower track. So we've got the upper track piles, and we've got the lower track piles. And these little crosshairs, so you've got LT33, LT56 and LT77 are lower track piles. They're the pile number and they've got an inclinometer installed in them. And there's same going on there. And there's several bits of instrumentation in the top, Lloyd's phase 1. So that's Lloyd's phase 2, Lloyd's phase 1. Southampton University have got strain gauges and all sorts in this, and they've got solar arrays that powers it, and they get all the data live. Getting the data there is no problem. Getting data out of Southampton University that we might want to look at has turned out to be pretty impossible. They're lovely guys, and I can't remember his name. It's Powery, isn't it? Bill Powery, Dr. Bill Powery, and he's oh yeah, I'll send you that, and his sidekick Joel, and they say yeah, we'll send you that, and I hope he's listening. I might jog his name. And I've never had it yet. That's some of the dirty work putting them in. So it's 650. No, 650. 575 diameter piles. Double row, that's on the top side of the road. Drilling and grouting, main sulfur coal. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. There's always 1. And this is Lloyd's phase 2. So you see Lloyd's cottage, that little bit of white there. That's the lower track piles going in. The upper track is where the dumper is. And then what was going to be the plan was a row of mini piles, 250mm diameter mini piles along the bottom by the riverbank. But we ran out of time to get them in for the funding window. How am I doing, Seb? Joking. Right, okay. So they beefed up the revetment to try and get a bit of loading on. And that's what it looked like. Completed in summer 2008. This bit here is Lloyd's Head. So a similar thing was going on at Lloyd's Head, rows of piles, beefed up revetment. And this is used by the Telford Canoe Club or the Ironbridge Canoe Club. And that's what it started to look like the following year. We start to get cracks appearing. So whereas we've got a toe of a landslip, what we did was we chopped off the toe of the landslip with piles. So now we have a backscarp where the toe used to be. And this is when I went and looked at it in 2021. And you can see that that's dropped by a considerable amount. So we can't really put anything on here to fill in the gap because that's loading the backscarp, and it's going to go. It's a bit of a problem. Anyway, that's a shame. That is LT77 on the lower track when it was installed. That's what it looks like now, which you can't see, can you? But that's the top of the inclinometer there. And we don't use meters at Telford and Wrekin, so you can see that the ground has fallen away by approximately 3/4 of a martin. And that's, we still monitor that, and the pipe hasn't come up, it's the ground dropped away because the pipe socketed in rock. That's a 16-meter long inclinometer. The deflection on that is currently about 350mm at the top, which is not good. So I rang John Ashton. John, this has happened. And he said, oh yeah. It's all right because we designed the piles with a cantilever of 1 to 2 meters. I thought, that's really good. Which is it, John? Because if it's 2 meters, I'm laughing all the way to the Black Swan. If it's 1 meter, we're about there. And if I just go back, so I looked at that first time I went there and I thought, oh, somebody tipped loads of concrete. And it isn't, it's every 2 meters you hit a pile and they're exposed, look a bit cracked. But what we didn't do, you see, we didn't get time or funding. I say we, because I didn't work for them then. So it's not wasn't my problem then, it's not my problem now. But there wasn't a pile cap put in to keep more rigid. And in line, so that the ones on the end are causing us a bit of trouble. So we keep an eye on those now. I'll whiz through Jackfield if I'm running out of time. Part of the 64 ranking lecture, a lot of movement, 20 metres downhill displacement, fissured clay extending to a depth of 67 metres, slip surface parallel to slope climbed at 10 metres. And the water at the time of it in 52 came up to, on average, 0.6 below surface. Now, I don't know what was going on in 1951, 52. 52, there was a lot of flooding. What's the place down in Devon? Linton, Lynmouth, they had severe flooding down there. So there's quite a lot going on climatically. And then the other thing, a bit more movement in 1984. I was quite surprised, actually. The wooden road went in 1984. So they couldn't keep the road from cracking. So they lashed together bits of wood. And this was a rite of passage. I'm looking at Nick now. If you just passed your driving test in Telford, that the rite of passage was you go drive down the wooden road as fast as you can, clattering. Okay, Jackfield landslip was similar pile design. Each pile row had to be cleared of trees, needed drilling and grouting. There were 16 mine entries that needed locating and stabilising, and that all had to happen before the piling could take place. So that was beautiful, pristine woodland ended up like that. And you can just imagine that the local residents were really pleased about that. 2,000 piles, 500 mini piles along the bottom. Drainage and beefed up revetment on the southern side of the river. And that's the layout of the piles. 10 rows of piles because 6 is split into 6 and 6A. Just keep your eye on this bit here. This is where the mini piles went. But if you look, the mini piles straddle the proposed road, which I couldn't understand. Probably wouldn't be a problem. But that's the road now. And we keep filling cracks up and they keep moving. I can't work out whether it's the same as on the Lloyds, that the right-hand side of the picture is nearest the river, whether it's the movement of the land towards the river, or whether it's simply something, and then Dr. Dave Giles pointed this out, it might be just there's a ridgy bit, the land settled a bit, and it's just broken its back on top of the piles. But that one keeps coming up because the landlord doesn't like it. Jiggers Bank, I'll go, this is mainly pictures. So we're at the north end of the World Heritage Site, where I've scribbled in red. It's interesting, it was a horse-drawn tramway. A horse-drawn tramway was a jigger, it was a type of horse and cart. And then it was widened in 1817. I only managed to find this one sketch of it. So this is a little cottage down the bottom, known as Rock Cottage. And the remains of it are still there, but don't tell the landowners I've told you that. And those buildings there, one of those is the Quaker Meeting House. And the geology really dictates the, oh, that's not good. The topography. So you can see that this yellow is a big sandstone, basal sandstone unit of the coal measures. The green is the Liebrook sandstone, and this purple is the Coalbrookdale Formation. So we've got a steep valley this way down to the Liebrook, and then we've got the Park and Ride at the top, and there's steep cliff face, and Jiggers Bank runs up through the middle of it all. 2 retaining walls, or were 2 retaining walls, and then a southern section was stabilised in 2000. So the southern section was stabilised, as I say, 2000, using soil nails and gabion baskets. And quite soon afterwards, cracks opened up on the uphill carriageway. And we filled them. They seem to have stopped. I think the gabions just took up the strain and moved no more. I'll skip through some of these. So this, the annoying thing is, right, that we own the wall, but everything this side is privately owned by one landowner. There's a lump of rock there, which we used to call the boulder, but I dug a trench on it, and that is actually bedrock that comes up like a Dartmoor tor, and they just incorporated the wall around it. The wall north of it is really shallow and it's sitting on fill. The big tall wall that you see the other side of it is sitting on the Liebruck sandstone, and that's a really good wall. But what we think happened was, oh, and that's the other thing, is we see this a lot in the Ironbridge Gorge, is they build walls with arches in them. And I don't know why, whether it's saving money on bricks, but the arches, there's 6 quite large arches in the Jiggers Bank wall, and a Patras plate. There used to be another Patras plate where that collapse was. So that's the southern bit, and it's like the Lloyds, it's very undulous. What they did was they decided to put soil nails in and edge the road with gabions. Did anybody see an obvious pair of errors with the soil nails and gabion baskets? I know you know. Yeah, so the soil nails went in near vertical, and the gabions also went in near vertical. So that's why I think the road cracked, because ideally you want the gabions leaning back into what they're supporting by about 5 degrees, and they didn't. And the soil nails work in tension, and these are working like cheese wire. That they're not doing what they're supposed to do. But actually, probably are doing what they're supposed to do, but they're not doing what a soil nail should do. And they put layers of geogrid in as well. It kind of worked, and I say this is one of the cord holes we did in that section. That white is one of the fiberglass soil nails that we cored through. So they should have gone in at 70 degrees. They're not quite at 70 degrees. They're probably nearer vertical. And that's what we think it's doing. So what, it was a single track road and they extended it. What we think was the wall was actually a lot lower. I'll hop back a bit. So if you with the eye of faith, there is a lip. Ooh, don't do that. There's a lip there. So we think this is younger than that bit of the wall. And we think that the original road was on top of that lip, and then to widen it, they chiseled into the sandstone. We know they chiseled because there's chisel marks on the sandstone. It's like dressed stone. And then they raised the ground level with mainly ash and slag, probably from the Bedlam and the Coalbrookdale furnaces. That's what we found. So when you've got a lovely old wall, what do you do to fix it? Because part of the problem was we figured what we can't do is we can't do a jack field on the side of the Liebruck, because one, we haven't got the money, and two, it's not our problem. It's private land, and it was difficult enough getting the landowners to agree to this. So what we did was we sprayed it with gunite, and then we put mesh on it, and we put over 150 rock anchors in and tarted it up. The other thing was, is obviously the parapet's a bit dilapidated because people keep driving into it with cars. And we sprayed it with gunite. I only put that one in because it reminds me of the clangers. But the vertical technology did a lot of the groundworks for it and the rope access stuff. And they cored the holes where the rock anchors have got to go in. And so to blank them off, they put the traffic cones in. And then Balfour Beatty charged them for the loss of cones. You'll laugh. Gulls. And that is a little graph I did, which shows where we were getting a void. So the black line at the top, right, bottom is the face of the wall. The red bit is where they go from fill into the sandstone, and then the sandstone, there's a crack that ran in it. There's an isolated crack there and a crack there that petered out, and we think that's something to do with gulls, because it will be moving this way. 5 minutes, thanks. So, and one of the loveliest things we smile at is when a councillor or one of the directors said, "Well, you've got a problem in the Ironbridge Gorge again. I thought we'd fixed it." And the green bits are the bits we've fixed. So Jackfield, the Lloyd's Head, and bits of Jiggers. And there's quite a lot that we haven't. Right, I've touched on mine in that this was our Christmas present last year. 2023, December 2023. We had a big hole open up. Now, these wouldn't be a problem because the boundary actually runs through the middle of the hole. So everything that side is Shropshire, but it was getting progressively bigger, and it finished up being about 10 metres by 7 and 4 metres deep. So we've got Damien to fly his drone over it, and it was actually starting to encroach on our land. So we phoned the Coal Authority because Shropshire weren't interested. And the Coal Authority said, "We'll come out and have a look." And they, without prejudice, filled it for us. They didn't stabilise it, they just filled it with stone. And we were so glad, because the land's owned by the Seven Gorge Countryside Trust, who are lovely people, but they ain't got two halfpennies to rub together. So they maintained it was a clay shaft. So this is the back of the, do you know the boat pub down in sort of back end of Jackfield, opposite the Memorial Bridge, opposite Coalport? And that opened up in the space of probably a week. Right, monitoring. We've got 200 plus inclinometer access tubes. We've just put some more in, and that's where they are. Now, it looks quite busy down here in Jackfield, and there's a bit going on in the Lloyd's, but you can see there's a lot of gaps in between. And one of the things we're expected to do is predict, well, that's LT77. That keeps you awake at night. Anyway, I'll come back to that. One of the things that we're asked to do as part of Operation Tangent is to predict where movement's happening, and it's impossible because you can only monitor these when you go and monitor them. There's no live data. Somebody has to go out with a reel, wind your inclinometer to the bottom, pull it back up. We've got 20. It's showing you a trend, but it's not telling you what it's doing now. So one of the things we've been looking at is INSAR, which is using effectively radar from satellites to bounce off targets. And that's the kind of hit rate we can get, which will hopefully show us where the hotspots are that we know about, and probably a few hotspots that we don't know about. And we're looking at getting funding for that now. And finally, that's our Operation Tangent. Yeah, so this is multi-agency response. We had an exercise in October last year called Exercise Aftershock, which was simulated failure in the gorge and how we'd respond to it with the fire brigade, ambulance service, police, utilities. You forget about these things, but the utilities. So one of the first things was a simulated gas leak, and all the time my service delivery manager is on his laptop and he's feeding this through to the high table to our director, who's going, "We've got a gas leak on Wesley Road," and it was quite exciting. And I actually died. They lost contact with me, missing, presumed dead. But it was very good. So we go, at the moment, we've just dropped back down to level 1 after the floods. We go up to level 2, maybe 3, when there's a flood event on. Do you know when floods happen? Flood season ends in the end of June and starts at the beginning of July. Anytime we get 3 or 4 times a year, the barriers are deployed. The bit we get jittery about is not while the flood's on, it's when the flood has gone and everything starts calming down, all the pore water pressures drop, and all the soils go and slide. But that's the basis of that. So we feed data into it. So having INSAR would be very useful if it works the way we hope it does. I mean, that we get almost live data as to movement and what's happening. And finally, a bit about development in the Ironbridge Gorge. I spoke to a gentleman today who's the managing director of GIP. Have you ever heard of him? A one-page A4 bit of questions you needed to fill in and countersign. And then something happened and we've rethought, and I thought, I'm not having this on my watch again. So the new stability declaration form is 8 pages, 4 pages of information and 4 pages that you have to fill in. And it's just about, people think they go by a site, they've got site at point A, and they think they're going to point B to build a beautiful house. And they don't actually realize that they're going to point C. And in between is point B, which is all your temporary works, so you can actually build it safely. And it covers things like, have you thought about mining? What you're doing about mining? Why aren't you doing mining if you're not doing anything about mining? Have you thought about your temporary works? Why haven't you thought about it? Why do you think it's not necessary, etc., etc.? And that all came on the back of this. Adrian knows where this is. This house, this is part of a large garden which was originally planned application for 3 dwellings, and it got knocked down to 1 dwelling. And there's a local guy wanted to build his own house, self-build, and started digging out, left his groundworks contractor on unsupervised, who cut a vertical face instead of a 45-degree angle. I probably think 45 degrees was pushing it, but that's what happened. And I had a phone call from Declan, team leader, said, "Where are you?" I'm in the town centre. "We've had a landslip." So you immediately get a little bit, it's like the Trumpton Fire Brigade, you know, and never used to go to a fire. What, really, a landslip? And that's what we came. But the worrying thing is that you can see there's a brick wall at the back of that idiot that's standing on the edge in the yellow orange suit. And then there's a public right of way that runs across there. It's not adopted highway, but it's owned by us. And people wanted to take their cars and park down there. The building at the top is Cherry Tree House, I think it's called. It's on the site of an old bungalow called Christina, which was knocked down because it was it was suffering from instability. And so a near vertical face collapsed and continued to, and if you look on the side, you can see there's about 1.5 meters made ground onto colluvium. And then there's a lot of water running through it. And that is what prompted us now. It doesn't look like that now. He's done a really good job, mechanically stabilized the slope. He's got a contig pile wall in. It's cost him, and he's nearly bankrupted him, but we could have probably saved him all that bother if we'd have had the stability deck. So the part of it is to protect the gorge, protect existing properties. For example, the one at the top there, which was quite worrying. We put 2 in kilometres up at the top just to keep an eye on it, which we've still not been paid for. But that's kind of the pitfall. So we don't mind. You can build what you want. We're not going to hold up development, but you've got to think about what you're doing. Not you in particular, but people need to think about what they're doing. And that in French is a wrap. Thank you. Questions, Seb? I think.